So some of us are married, some of us are divorced. I'm getting married in 3 weeks. Don't. No. He's a keeper, so he's worth it. But I want to talk about how having cancer, breast cancer, strengthened or hindered your relationship with your significant other, your spouse, or maybe your best friend, like whoever you want to talk about that with. But how did that play a role in your relationship?
We have a strong relationship. We still did, but I sure my husband wanted to sit and cuddle me, but after so many surgeries and you're burnt and, you know, it's like, you know, kind of keep a distance. Not because I didn't want him to love me.
Right, because of the way you were feeling.
Yeah, I felt like crap.
Right.
My whole family was so supportive. They would have been there in a minute. But sometimes I wanted that minute to myself.
And you also, but I was just say you also knew when you needed that that time, because I think we all need that.
And he was really good.
Time.
If it was like, don't bug me, then he would not bug me.
I know your story's completely different.
Oh, yes, it is. Well, so we were already working on getting divorced, and he was such a jerk to me the day before I told him, and I just didn't feel like he had the right to know, and I don't know, he like was really prying and trying to get it out of me. And then the next day I was just like, you know what, I'm not your concern anymore. You don't need to worry about it. And then the next day I finally told him, and all of a sudden he was super nice. I'm so sorry you have to go through this and blah, blah. And it just wasn't, there's genuine kindness. And I just didn't feel like that was genuine. And even through this whole thing, like, some days I know it's been hard for him. Like last Friday was our last mediation. So this is like really brand new divorce, but like he just has not, like he wants to be there and he wants a role in this cancer thing that's going on, but I just don't want help from him. I have so many other people that are there that I would rather have help me, and I just feel like it's not a genuine offer, and I don't want it thrown back in my face. And it's been hard because it's just me and my girls, which I'm fine with. But it's also hard because there are those times where you're just sitting there and you don't have anyone to talk to, and you don't have anyone to share these things with. And I certainly don't want to call him and be like, hey, I just don't want anything between us anymore. Right. Because I think he'll take it the wrong way, and I don't want to go down that path again. So it's been hard, and my girls are young, and they don't want to hear my sad story, and like I cry in the shower because I don't want to cry in front of them. And
so I think it's great that he is there with the kids. He can take the kids, and you have your time to yourself, and you also get to create relationships like we get to create now that we all know each other, so we can call on each other and say, this just happened, like I'm literally in my closet crying and I have no one else to talk to, and we get it. And I think that's where you understand when someone else is going through the same thing, that you get to do that. But thanks for sharing. I mean, I know it's so fresh, and it's also fresh for you, so it's hard.
And can I say one thing before we go down the road?
Of course.
They're like, no.
You're cut off, but we'll let you do it.
So this is how I feel about it. It's not just us that go through. Everyone that knows you goes through it with you,
and they don't know.
It affects your whole. It affects everyone around you.
I'd agree with that.
And you've got to choose.
And
good attitude or bad attitude, but it affects everyone. It's not just about us.
And all their emotions is so different. But
absolutely,
the treatment, everything is about you. But everybody around you has different emotions, and they probably they're scared, and they don't know how to relate. Yeah. And so I think that makes up for the what not to say when someone has cancer. We'll get into that a little bit later, but we're going to move on to Ginger.
Everything changes, financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. You know, everything changes. Everything's impacted by that. And granted, you know, I saw a relationship go downhill for a long time, and there was a lot of factors into that. But while that relationship was going downhill, I chose personally to then turn my relationship to God. And that relationship, you know, whether it's the universe or, you know, however you relate to that, that relationship magnified. And so for me, being able to start to go into a space where I'm trying to identify more with myself, because my life was falling apart. I mean, it was, and it did. And now I'm building, I'm picking up the pieces. But for me, the relationship was identifying with the divine, and then also identifying more with myself. Of, why do I do what I do? Why do I say what I say? What I believe, what I believe? Like, where is my inner core, and what do I want my future to be, instead of always feeling like I was being controlled by all the other outside elements. So for me, it was a very sacred journey in a way.
So, Lydia, I love watching your Facebook posts where you're running, and you're with, I don't know, I think it was a couple weeks ago, something with like a walk with your husband around Daybreak Lake and post-cancer. So tell me about your relationship with your husband.
So he's a super tender-hearted man. A lot of people don't realize that about him, because I'm the one that gets to see that, and it's part of why I married him. So I feel very blessed that I've had that with me the entire time, and I realize that not everybody has that. And one of the things that happened was a couple weeks after the diagnosis, he's like, "You're really taking this very well." And I said, "Well, I have a couple choices. I could wallow and drag you down with me, or I can, there's nothing I can do about this diagnosis. I just have to do the best I can with what I know and move forward." And he's like, "Oh, okay." He's just like, "All right." Well, I got to the point where I went to the oncologist and learned about the chemo. That was a shock, because initially that was not the case. And like you had said, it's like, oh, great, I'm now have to go through chemo. And I was fine. I'm like, okay, they told me all of the rotten side effects. I don't know if that's the new thing, but they told me everything, because I've been told other people were not told anything. I was told everything. And I'm like, whoa, this is pretty harsh. Well, then I went to my radiology oncologist, and then they're talking about, it's on your left side and your heart may be radiated and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like going, no, I'm not going to do this. And I came home and I told my husband, I'm not going to do this. I'm not doing this. And he just stopped for a second, and he went, "What about me?" And I was like, "But it's my body, and I had clear margins, and my lymph nodes that they took out were clear, and I'm okay. They've gotten it all. I'm good." So the next day, he always needs 24 hours to process. I think many men are like that. Yes. And he just said, "I am willing to do whatever you do. I will back you up." And it was just so tender and loving. One thing I did want to say, and I know this might be a little bit uncomfortable for people to talk about, but cancer and treatment messes with your intimacy with your spouse. And it really stunk, because I am very physical, and that is something that I very much enjoy about my marriage. And I finally asked him about it, and he said, "I'm afraid I'm going to hurt you." And that was so hard to accept, and I know I have to respect his feelings about that, but that was really hard. And I had that poured in me for 14 months, and it was painful, and he knew that, and to not have that piece of our marriage for a long time really sucked.
I can understand that, and I'm going to, just so you feel comfortable, I want to share a story, because my fiance, soon-to-be husband, came to me and he said, "What if I'm the one that hurt you? What if I'm the one that gave you this cancer? I'll never be able to live with myself." And that's been hard, to be engaged and get married and to hear that, and to not always have that intimacy, because it does affect the emotion, and it's definitely something that I think it's a reality. But it's a reality that people have to understand and know about, because it's not necessarily that they don't want to touch you or we don't want to be touched. It's just,
you don't love each other. Yeah.
It's just where you're at, and everyone's still processing. So, but thank you so much for sharing that, because it's such an important aspect of the realities of this. So, and Tony, you talk every time
You're making me cry. I mean, I'm doing really good, then they get to me and I just start crying, and they're like, "Let's not talk to her anymore."
No.
You guys, when you're talking about, when you said about cancer effects, I'm really into acronyms, and I made an acronym for cancer, and it's change agent, naturally empathy rises, because it affects everybody. And yeah, a lot of other things arise, but you will also feel empathy from strangers and everything. My relationship with my husband is good and sometimes not good. And he's, you know, being the real stoic one, you know, going to work, because I work for myself, so I've been able to, you know, not work as much and not have to be at an office or whatever, and still teach and do what I do. And but, you know, our sex life right now isn't that great. You know, he goes to bed early and gets up early because that's what his job is, and I can't sleep. And I'm trying to get to bed, and then, you know, they're like, well, radiation's coming up. Well, the only side effect mostly is fatigue. I'm like, great. I'm not sure how much more I can take of that. But he's been really great. He really listens, and, you know, he's there, but it's a whole new territory for everybody, and you don't know how. There's no direct path. You just have to flow, and trusting the unknown is a challenge, but you have to, because if not, you can go down this deep, dark hole that you never get out.
Absolutely. It's uncharted waters.
It totally is uncharted waters.
And for everyone, it's a completely different path, and we don't know how it's going to work out, but you just trust in the relationships that you do have and the ones that are strong, and continue to nurture them and support, and somehow it all works out, right? It is what it is.
It's what it is.